students, welcome back to the series called Stories. I'm Jamie. I'm hosting this week, and I'm sitting here with John.
Yes, sir.
John, why don't you tell him what the Story series is all about?
Oh, man, I would love to, Jamie. You know that? Story series. We're here telling our stories, and that's it.
It's your truth.
No, it's a series on our testimonies, and we just want to give a really opportunity to share testimonies on this podcast or in this series.
Yeah.
And
I think testimonies or stories are maybe the most powerful thing we have, because at the end of the day, it's your story of life change.
right. Yeah.
It's no one can take that from you. No one can change that. And so I'm excited to sit here. So John, I guess the first thing really is, what was your life like before Jesus? Because
Man.
we know you now, but
Yeah.
prior, what was your life like
Yeah,
before you met
yeah.
Jesus?
So just a little bit of background. Like, I grew up pretty much in church. Like, and when I mean church, I mean like every Wednesday night,
Nice.
Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, all that. Events we'd go to, all that kind of stuff. And my dad actually also became a pastor too. So really, like, honestly, like every day was church.
Nice.
Pretty much. In hindsight, I'm very thankful for it. But yeah, I grew up in a Christian home. So didn't really like have a whole lot of issues like growing up, like anything like that. But I remember at a young age, we lived in Georgia at the time, and we went to this church, and I was about 5-6 years old. And for some reason, I was in the main service, and we went to a Southern Baptist church. Like, when I mean Southern, I mean like
KJV?
I mean like KJV only.
Yes. That's, we have history.
Yeah. So I went to a church who they were pretty brutal on the honest truth and stuff. And I remember sitting there as a 6-year-old, and the pastor started preaching on hell. And like, if you don't know Jesus, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
And as a 6-year-old kid, like, that's pretty terrifying.
That's
to
scary.
hear, right? Yeah. Like, I don't want to burn. Like, give me a way out. And so
Yeah, who wants to get deep fried and crispy?
yeah, not me, man.
Not me.
Not me. I'm not even a big fan of KFC or anything like that. So anyway, so at the end of the message, he did give the gospel message that there was a guy who could save us from this, and his name was Jesus. At that point in time, the only thing in my mind is, how in the world do I get out of hell?
Yeah.
And
You're looking for your get out of hell free card.
Yeah. And so I went home, and I was just scared to death, and I was crying the whole way home. And my dad's like, "What in the world is wrong with you?" And right then and there, like, I told him what was going on. I was like, "I just want to get saved. I don't want to go to hell. Like, this guy Jesus, I want to know him so he can save me." So my dad did his best and explained it to me, and I'm over here like full of snot and tears and all that. And I get quote unquote saved. And I was like, all right, I'm good. I got that get out of hell card now.
I'm good.
I'll put it in my wallet and keep it on me. That way, you know, anytime somebody's like, "Hey, are you going to heaven or hell?" I'll be like, got my get out of
I got it.
hell card. So pretty much, long story short, we moved back to North Carolina, where
The better state.
the better state, back here in Winston. And I went back to my old school and everything. And like I said, man, like, just grew up, normal childhood, was a middle schooler, did stupid stuff, said stupid stuff, you know, like
Every one of you.
every one of you. That's a whole nother
That's
podcast.
a whole nother
That's a
podcast.
whole other podcast.
That's for the bonus content. Only for our Patreon.
Yeah, for the Patreon, man. Yeah. So, went through middle school, high school, just doing normal kid stuff, dumb stuff, and not really partying or anything, although I knew friends who did party. But to be honest, like, not even trying to be jokey or anything, like, I lived a pretty sheltered life. And honestly, thank God for that. Wasn't really exposed to a whole lot. So anyway, you fast forward to about my senior year, where I get a little bit more independence, right? So now I've got a job.
You get a car.
You could call it that. It was it was a hand-me-down from my brother, and it was it had 4 wheels and a door.
Listen,
Doors.
that was my first car.
Really?
My first car was old.
It was just old. Yeah. So it got me from A to B, anywhere I wanted to go. And so anyway, I ended up in a relationship with a girl, and from that point, it kind of started to go downhill from there. In between my junior and senior year, so in sophomore, I started dating this girl, got a job, playing sports, all this stuff. And then you transition to my junior year, and in the summer going into my senior year, my grandpa died. And my grandpa was like, he was my go-to guy. He was the glue that held like the family together. He was my rock. And when he passed away, like that hit hard, and it's still hard, you know.
Yeah.
Someone you look up to. So that and me saying that, like I'm saying that because he was a man of God. Like he wasn't perfect, but he made sure, like if I said the things that he would say, he would smack me and be like, "Don't say that." Like, you know what I mean? So
Hey, we all need somebody like that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, he passed away, and my girlfriend ended up breaking up with me, and that went away. And so like all this stuff that like was a part of me is going away. And then at the time of his funeral, my brother comes down from Georgia, my older brother, and he comes out and he's just like, "Yeah, man, like this God thing, you know, like I don't really believe in it. Like it's kind of a joke, and it's whatever." And he was somebody else that I looked up to. So one died, the other one's living, but he's dead in spirit, and that wrecked my spiritual side of my life. And it was like, okay, well, he's bringing up some good points. He's saying he doesn't believe in God. He's older than me. He must know what he's talking about. And so it's like, dude, what do I really believe in?
Man.
And it was hard. Luckily though, well, not really luckily, but at the time, my worldview, it was a good time period of, I was going into the new school year. So, okay, I've got sports coming up. I can identify as a soccer player. And at my school, it was like a school of like 100 people. And so I pretty much made the team on everything.
Oh,
as long as you could see the ball and either hit it or kick it or grab it, you made the team.
Basically, if you were an able body.
Yes, you were on the team. So, so I played all 3 sports, and I was really looking forward to it. Like, okay, this is going to get me back on track. And throughout the school year, it really just started hitting me during basketball season. So we got done with soccer season, and I wasn't able to make it to the state championship. And I was like, man, like we had a really good shot at that point. All these other sports were gonna just be really bad, because I was decent at soccer.
Yeah.
So that really hurt, and I was like, okay, we got basketball season. Well, 4 or 5 weeks in, we're like 0-8. Like we're just terrible. And I'm just like,
you were the MVP though.
Yeah, with 2 points.
Hey,
over 8 games.
MVP.
So yeah, over 8 games, like just not really going well. I'm still trying to get over the girl, and I'm still trying to process all these emotions, but I'm also trying to just suppress it and be like, it's okay. Like the sports thing's going to work out. I'm going to get my championship, and I can identify as a champion and go on that way. Well, October rolls around, and my school, like I went to a Christian school, and we had Bible class.
Okay.
And we were going over the book of Hebrews, and this still sticks with me. I'm going to be vulnerable here and tell you, outside of knowing that it was written to the Jews, I don't really know what's in Hebrews. Okay. But this verse right here has stuck with me. And the context of it also sticks with me. Hebrews 10:26 says, "For if we go on sinning deliberately after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a fearful expectation of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries." Now, as a Christian now, as Christians, we still sin, right?
All the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Right? That doesn't necessarily mean, okay, we've sinned every day now. We've lost our salvation, right? In this particular context, it's talking about the Jews and how after Jesus came and died on the cross, there's our salvation is in Jesus. But unfortunately, there were still some Jews who were still trying to use the law and follow the law and follow this religious practice and stuff. And here, it's basically talking about like, hey, don't do that. Like, you're going to follow the law, but you're still sinning. And if you still sin and you don't receive Christ, you ain't making it.
Yeah, that is the gospel.
Yeah. And so for me, I'm a non-Jew, believe it or not. But for me, it hit me as like, wait a minute. I've grown up in a Christian home. I'm going to a Christian school. And yet I'm living a very religious life. I'm saying all the right things. I know how to persuade the teachers to make them think that, oh man, like John, he's a good Christian guy. Oh man, like he does all this. He serves on this ministry and does this. Like, oh wow. But my whole purpose for it was just to make me look better. And that verse really hit hard of like, wait a minute. I'm putting my identity in these things, in these physical things, and there's no hope for me after I die. And once again, those emotions started to come up. My grandpa passing away, girlfriend breaking up with me, my first girlfriend, oh my gosh, freaking out. My brother being an atheist, God, like all these questions, like, where do I go, God? And I wouldn't share it with anybody. I would just keep going about my day like, okay, I'm going to deal with it. I'll answer these questions myself. It's fine. And every night, man, for like 3 weeks straight, like I'm not even exaggerating. It was like I would go to bed miserable. I would go to bed sick, sweating. like I'm a pretty cold nature guy, and I would just sweat, and I would just be like sitting there like on the verge of tears, sometimes crying. And it got to the point where like it felt like my heart was about to pound out of my chest. Like if I go to sleep right now, there's a possibility I might not wake up tomorrow and I'm going to go to hell. I'm not figuring this out on my own. I need to go to somebody. And one day in the middle of October 2013, I was in first period sitting there, and I was just looking straight ahead at the teacher and like just like holding my hands like this, like white knuckling, if you know what that means, just like holding your hands really tight and just staring just like right through him. Didn't even hear a word. I'm pretty sure he asked me a question. I just sat there like a weirdo.
Yeah, he'd love that.
So. And then second period came around. I'd go and sit in the class and just stare right ahead. Third period came around. At this point, I'm breaking a sweat from just doing this, right? All these questions, all this burden on me of like, you got to figure it out. You got to figure out who you are. You got to figure out where you're going, all this stuff. And then fourth period, I was like, okay, it's art class. It's one of my favorite teachers. I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to forget about it. We walk in and he was like, hey guys, y'all want to talk about Christ today? It was just like at that point, like, let's talk about the gospel. And at that point, it was just like, I just broke down. And it was me and like 5 other guys in that class and the teacher. And it's just funny to think about it now. Like I'm in the middle of this art class and we're drawing with like crayons and, like all this stuff. And I'm just breaking down crying. And
everyone else around you is probably like, John's getting really into this art.
The art was speaking through me that day. But no, yeah. So I broke down and I finally just told my teacher, I was just like, I need to talk to somebody. And so he took me to my principal, Mr. Holly, which is a great guy. Love him to death. And shout out Mr. Holly if you're ever going to watch this.
Which he will.
Which,
everyone will.
I'll tag him. Okay. I'll drop his @ Anyway, went to talk to him, man, and just as soon as I walked into his door, just once again, just started bawling, and he's just looking at me, and he just instantly knows what's going on. And so I'm sitting there, and it's kind of like this setup. So if I was Mr. Holly, I'd be where the camera's at, and we're just sitting there, and he's just right there, and the whole time, like I can tell he's just like praying for me, just sitting there with his head down praying, and then after about like 5 minutes, or it felt like forever, but after about 5 minutes, he was just like, "You got something you want to share?" you
Wow.
know? And I was just like, yeah. And then I just was just blabbering through, like, my grandpa died, and my girl, and my brother. And he's just like, just being so, so kind and considerate. And he came over, he had 2 chairs, and he came over and sat in the chair next to me and was like, "John, I think you know well enough, you know enough about Jesus. You have all the head knowledge. Have you made the internal decision to sacrifice what you want in your life to follow Jesus?" That's what he's asking you to do. And maybe I'm about to cry thinking about it. That just hit me hard, man. Like, all this time, I knew who Jesus was. I knew all the rules and the laws and all this stuff that I was supposed to do to be a good person. But I didn't really accept Christ in my heart. And on that day, I thought about my 6-year-old self, how scared I was of hell, that I just, Jesus, you're the answer.
Yeah.
And now I didn't even think about hell on that day. All I thought about was the amazing grace Jesus was showing me on that day. I could look back and see how he was there throughout my grandpa's funeral. I could see how he was there through that breakup. I could see how he was there with talking with my brother. He was there during the sports. He was there the whole time. And just the burden that I felt lift off. He was like, "Man,
Wow.
been here the whole time.
That's
like,
crazy.
I got you." And so, we went through it and we prayed together. We knelt down together. And man, like, after saying, just, "God, please save me. Like, I'm yours. I give my life to you. Amen." And we stand up, dude. It was just like, I could fly. Like, I could just, like, it was like a helium balloon. I could just go. And it was just amazing. And so, yeah, that was how I met Christ. I know that was kind of long, but yeah.
No, that's
yeah,
good. That's
yeah.
good. So you grew up kind of in the Christian home, and you said you didn't really do a whole lot that was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said it was junior year, senior year, you met Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So what changed once you fully, I guess, not met him, but surrendered to him?
Yeah. So intentionality, my intentions, my purpose, the way I spoke and everything. The way I spoke was pretty much the same. But my intentions were black and white. Like, they were
Wow.
a complete 180. Like, it wasn't to make myself look good. All it was to show how God was good to me.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus did this. It wasn't me. Like,
No, that's good.
yeah. And so I think for me, the biggest thing was just the intentions behind what I was doing. And yeah, I mean, again, I know we talked, I think, a couple weeks ago about justification and sanctification,
Yeah.
and like that process. And honestly, as a church kid, some of you might relate. You come to know Jesus and then you accept him in your heart and you're like, "Okay, cool." And
I'm
it's
good.
like, all right, okay. And you just kind of like, just keep doing what you're doing. But now that I'm 27, I got saved back in 2013. So that's 11 years now.
Wow.
Like, I can see over time the sanctification process. I can look back and be like, "Dude, 5 years ago you were doing that? Like, oh my gosh, you're so bad." And then, like, I can look back 10 years ago and be like, "You were way worse 10 years ago though." So that's a win. And
Think
so,
about 10 years in the future.
exactly. It's looking back now and being like, "Dude, I was doing a podcast." No, I'm kidding. But so yeah, I mean, intentionality. My intentions were different. And then
No, I think that's great. So to kind of give a capstone to all of this, let's say there's a student watching that has grown up in church and that has heard all the stories, right? They've heard about who Jesus is. They've heard about him walking on water and doing the fish and loaves miracles, and they've heard the stories. They could probably tell them better than we could tell them.
Yeah.
But they're struggling. Do you have any advice you would share with them, or anything that maybe, for you it helped, and so something you think you could just give to them to kind of, capstone?
Yeah. If you know Jesus, but you don't truly know him, like, you don't have that life change, it's gonna be hard to listen to. So you're going to be like, oh, I didn't like that. Remove your pride. Remove your pride. I had to experience some things, and maybe some of you are watching, you're like, oh, that's it. Like, that's not that bad. For me, it was the worst case scenario, losing my grandpa and all this stuff that followed through, just building on top of each other. I had to go through that to realize, like, man, I'm putting myself before God. I'm acting like I'm the one who deserves love and respect and all this stuff, and I don't. We don't.
Man.
You know, check your pride. Check your pride. I'm gonna leave it at that, man. Like
I think that's good.
That's check your pride. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you guys hung with us. You got to hear John's story. If you have a story similar to his, maybe you feel that way where you grew up in church and you heard the stories and you've just been struggling, or you know them, but like, do you believe them? Reach out to John. I know he'd love to talk with you. I'm sure that as much as John shared, I'm sure there's 100 things he didn't share. And so
that's for sure. Yeah.
If you have questions, you can drop it in the comment section. You can send him a text or a phone call. You can come to church.
Come to church. Hey, how about that?
How about
crazy.
that?
That's crazy.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, wow.
Not me.
Not this guy.
Not me.
Yeah, I'm not even in a room right now. We're in the Matrix. Anyway.
But I hope if that connected with you, if his story connected with you, reach out to him. He'd love to help. And we'll see you next time.
Peace.